In this video we'll talk about the panels section over here of the MemorialDESIGNER Docker. There's three different sections at the moment in the Docker, and the first one being the panels. If you click on either heading or these arrows over here, you can collapse or expand them. But we'll just be talking about panels for this video. Panels can be created on any object, really, or even around text. So we'll show text first. If I were to take some text and John J, just type in some text here. Okay, so I've got three different lines of text. I just hit enter to get to each of those lines, so they're actually still all combined together. I can make any of my changes that I want size-wise first, but then if I wanted to build a panel around my text, I select it with my pick tool, and then over here I have the different settings for the panels. I can do a frost line, a single line with frost, or a double line. I can scallop the corners. I can make sure that it fills in correctly so that I can do granite fills later. Recreate panel we'll talk about here in a little bit. And then it's got the different settings depending on which kind of panel style that we do. So I'll just drag this down into the middle so that we can see what it does. If I wanted just a single frost line and hit apply, what this does is it takes those three lines of text and breaks them apart into individual lines of text. It builds a rectangle around that text, and the way that it gets the spacing is based off of this number here, which is text spacing. So it has spaced ½ inch between each of the lines of text, and then it's also done ½ inch top to bottom of the text. The other thing that it did is, since this is 1¼ inch tall letter, and that's the tallest of our three, it has given us 1¼ inch spacing on either side here. So that's how panels are built using standard panels over here. If you want to, now that this has been built, I can select that frost line and change it to a single line. As you notice down here, the hard line option popped up because a single line is going to give a single hard line. So if I hit apply, it's giving me a 0.09 inch hard line on the outside of that frost. Single line with frost will do something similar, except that it will give an extra frost line on the outside of that with this number here, which is 1/8 inch. So if I hit apply, it's just giving us an extra frost line on the outside. If I want to do a double line, it then gives us a bar line option, which is this size. That's our bar line there, so that's 1/4 inch, and then we've got two hard lines that have 0.09 for their spacing. If we wanted to scallop these, we could take this option here, scalloped corners, and hit apply. Now I had only selected just the frost part of the panel, which is why it didn't do the outside, so I'd want to undo hitting Control Z on the keyboard. This time I'll select everything and hit apply. Now if I were to scallop a scalloped panel, because I have recreate panel checked here, it's not going to scallop a scalloped panel. But if I undid recreate panel, I can hit apply, and it's going to mess up. It's going to try to scallop the scallops and just totally mess things up. So we don't want that to happen. So I've done an undo here. Even if I went back to, let's say, just a single frost line. So the single frost, you can see how it's got a scallop, and then it scalloped that scalloped the scallop, and if I do it again, it's going to scallop that scallop. So it's going to just keep messing up, which is why there's the recreate panel option. So if I had recreate panel, what it does is it finds the bounding box, the overall size of our piece here, and rebuilds it. So we want recreate panel checked most of the time, but in a little bit we'll show when you don't want that to be checked. So back to these settings, you can always go back and change double line, single line, however you want it to be. If you wanted to give a little bit more space or less space on the edges, you can select just the pieces of the panel. It's easy to do that when there's nothing behind it. If you hold down Alt on the keyboard and then just click and drag with your mouse to draw a marquee, anything that's touching that dotted blue line is going to get selected. So now I've got all pieces of my panel selected, and if I were to just drag in one direction, it'll go off to the side. If I hold down Shift while I drag, it will resize from the center so that it's even on both sides. Now the downside to just resizing this way is that it stretches. So now these lines are no longer 0.09, and our scallops don't look very good because they've been stretched. That's okay though, because we can go ahead and just recreate our double line panel. It's not going to go all the way to the end, because what it does is it builds from the inside. So it's going to start at the very inside rectangle here and then build its way back out. So when I hit apply, it'll actually shrink a little bit from what it was, but it will fix our scallops and it'll fix our edges so that they look correct. Another thing that that you can do is you can just change this back to a frost line really quickly, and then that frost line is easy to just change size-wise by itself, and then you can reapply whatever you want to that. So that's how you build panels with the standard panels here with the different options. One thing that often comes into play is, let's say we had a stone design. I'm just going to do shape builder here and do the whatever my standard is. I've already got that one panel in the back, so I just selected it, and holding Shift page up, that'll bring it to the front of the layer, and then I can drag it to where I want it to be. From there I could hit M to mirror it to the other side, and then I could retype the text. However, let's say we wanted to use the entire shape of the stone. We wanted that to be a panel. So we could take our stone, and over here's the contour tool. If we take contour, contour is an interactive tool, so we can either type in settings up here, or I like to just click and drag until I get it to about where I want it to be, and then that gives me a rough number here, and then I can type in something specific if I wanted to. The number of steps is how many different contours that it creates. We don't really want to use more than one step in what we do. And then there's these options that either go outside, so if I zoom out we'll see what happened here, or to the inside, or to the center, but that's going to create a lot of steps, and once again we don't really want to do that. So we just want to do an inside contour with a single step. 2.5 inches is good. Once we've got that, a contour is combined with whatever it came from until you go up to Object and say Break Contour Group Apart. Once you break that apart, then we've got this piece here that's all by itself now and can be messed with. If I just clicked on Apply right now with a single line with frost, it's going to build a big square, and that's because it's going to recreate the panel. So this is an instance when we don't want to do that. So if I select this, if I want this to become a panel, I uncheck Recreate Panel and hit Apply. Had I left that checked, it would have just turned into a big square, which is not what I wanted it to do. So panels can also be created with pretty much any shape. If I had a circle, I could create a panel around that. Once again, uncheck Recreate and redo it. I could just draw something crazy, so any sort of shape that I wanted to, I could turn that into a panel. Once again, on shapes that are odd like this, you want to uncheck Recreate Panel, otherwise it would just become a rectangle. The other nice thing, I'm just going to back up here a little bit to when we had two panels. Okay, so these two panels we can change by selecting both at the same time. And even if we had a family name panel, so I'll just drag this up here and shrink it a little bit, grow it this way. We can select all three of these at the same time, choose double line and hit apply, and it will rebuild all of those panels at the same time, which is pretty cool. So you can do multiple selections all at once. If there's text inside of a panel already, it's going to not try to space that text because it's already existing in a panel, and it ignores it as long as it's text. If it were converted to curves, then it would not ignore the text. Let's see. The last thing here is that you can save your default. So if you wanted a different default for your hardline or your text spacing, you can just type in a new number, like 3/4 of an inch, and then hit this little disk here, and that will save those as the setting that you prefer. It won't respace this text like I said before because it's already existing in a panel. So if I wanted to respace that, I have to delete the existing panel and redo it. So I'll just hit apply this time. I'll do the same thing over on this side. If you're building text, or panels off of text, and you're going to have a double stone, if instead of John here we had Rachel, something like that, since her name is longer than John's, it would be a better idea if we created the panel first off of her name, since hers is longest, and then we could just take her panel and mirror that to the other side. So you really like to have the longest name first if you're creating a panel based off of that, just because you want to make sure that you have enough room. Or you could always go through and redo it. The other option too is you could make a single panel. So because I've got the stone design already behind here, it's not as easy to to select everything. A panel really is only two pieces, so if I zoom in here I can select the outside, shift select the inside, and that gives me my two pieces. Or I can hit V on the keyboard to go to wireframe, and then I can use Alt to do my marquee selection here. And I could drag that all the way across over to here and then rebuild my panel. If I wanted to center it, I just hold down Shift, select the stone, and hit C on the keyboard, and that will center it left to right there. So that's how you create panels using the standard panels section of Memorial Designer.